And when you think of Ladakh, you probably picture these breathtaking landscapes, maybe some serene monasteries. But recently, this incredibly peaceful place became the site of some really shocking violence. So today, we're going to unpack the protests that have shaken this region, the long-standing demands that are really at the heart of it all, and the very uncertain road that lies ahead. Okay, so first up, a peaceful place, a violent day. To really get why what happened was so jarring, you first have to understand Ladakh's reputation. For decades, it's been known for its tranquility. But on September 24th, well, that image was just shattered. And listen to this quote from Dalma Funsuk, a local NGO member who was right there at the protest. She said, "I had never imagined that such a scene could have occurred in Ladakh." She talks about smoke shells, batons, security forces storming the park. I mean, it was a scene that nobody there was prepared for. Just total disbelief. And the human cost of that day? Well, it was just devastating. In the clashes that broke out, 4 local residents lost their lives. And it wasn't just the fatalities. On top of that, approximately 90 other people were injured. This turned what was a political demonstration into a massive medical emergency. See, this kind of violence is it's a complete anomaly here. According to the National Crime Records Bureau, Ladakh has one of the lowest crime rates in the entire country. So the events of September 24th weren't just some incident, they were a profound shock that has left the whole community just grappling to understand how this could have happened. Next section, the hunger strike catalyst. So what exactly lit the fuse here? Well, the immediate trigger was a hunger strike started by a really prominent local figure, and it set off a chain of events that unfolded incredibly fast. So, here's how it went down. On September 10th, the well-known climate activist Sonam Wangchuk started a hunger strike to really put a spotlight on Ladakh's demands. Then, just 2 weeks later, on September 24th, that strike was abruptly called off, as the protests just exploded into deadly violence. And in the aftermath, Wangchuk himself was detained under the very stringent National Security Act. So let's talk about what Ladakh is demanding. You know, Wangchuk's strike might have been the catalyst, but the grievances behind it, they've been simmering for years. These protests are all centered on a really clear set of political and constitutional demands for the future of the region. And the protest leaders have laid out a very clear 4-point agenda. First, they want full statehood for Ladakh, which would give them way more legislative power. Second, they're asking for inclusion in the 6th schedule of the Constitution to protect tribal rights. Third, a second parliamentary seat in the Lok Sabha to give them a bigger voice on the national stage. And finally, their own public service commission to control local hiring. Now, this 6th schedule thing is a really big deal. It's at the absolute heart of these demands. For a place like Ladakh, which has a majority tribal population, getting into the 6th schedule would mean a huge amount of autonomy. It would give local bodies control over their own land, their forests, their cultural affairs, basically all the safeguards they feel are absolutely essential for their survival. And this quote from Dr. Mutasif Ladakhi, it really gets to the core of the frustration. He points out that ever since Ladakh became a union territory back in 2019, it's been run by administrators who, as the locals see it, just don't have a deep understanding of the region's unique culture and its challenges. And that feeling is what's really fueling this demand for more self-governance. All right, next section, a region in shock. So the political debate is one thing, but the human toll and the totally conflicting stories that are coming out from the ground, they paint a picture of a community that's really in trauma, just trying to make sense of everything that happened. And now you've got these 2 completely different stories that have emerged. The official narrative suggests that the protests had some kind of foreign backing, even connections to Pakistan. But on the ground, the locals are asking, why is our patriotism being questioned? They're pointing to generations of service in the Indian Army and saying, look, our demands are purely about protecting our own homeland. This account from Zanu Tundup is just heartbreaking, and it really gives a face to that local response. His brother-in-law, Sawang Tarchin, who was one of the 4 people killed, was an army veteran. He actually fought in the Kargil War. So for his family and so many others, being labeled anti-national feels like a profound insult to their entire legacy of service. And if you want to understand just how bad the violence got, you just have to look inside the hospital. One senior doctor who spoke anonymously said that in their 24-year career, this was the first time they had ever had to treat firearm injuries in Leh. The only thing they could compare the chaos to was the deadly cloudburst disaster back in 2010. The hospital had to perform 46 blood transfusions just to handle the flood of about 20 patients who came in with bullet and pellet wounds. In the days that followed, a real chilling effect started to take hold. Local influencers, a rap artist, even government employees have reportedly been warned not to speak out. One youth member put it very simply: it's control. So, where does all of this leave us? Well, it leads to a very difficult and unresolved situation where the dialogue has pretty much stalled and tensions are still running incredibly high. Welcome to an uncertain future. And look, it's really important to get this. None of this happened in a vacuum. This isn't a new conflict. For years, leaders from Ladakh and the central government have been holding talks, but they have repeatedly failed to find any common ground. The locals feel like their demands are just being met with unkept promises and dilly-dally tactics. And that, of course, just fuels even more anger. And that really leaves us with a central question here. After a day of violence that nobody ever thought possible, with this huge gap between the official story and what people on the ground are feeling, and with a political stalemate that seems completely unbreakable, what is the path forward for this once peaceful region? Right now, that remains deeply, deeply uncertain.